It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, live from Rome as Italy goes into lockdown. 16 million people are put in mandatory quarantine because of coronavirus, as the number of deaths here jumps by 133 in a day. Crowds stay away from public events, including the Pope's weekly address, after the Prime Minister declares a national emergency. In the UK, a third person with COVID-19 dies, and the government outlines emergency measures to deal with an epidemic.
First and foremost, supporting public services, but also helping vulnerable people and indeed businesses to get through anything that might be coming our way.
Heckled over the floods.
Russian money to get elected! Russian report hidden! Traitor!
The Prime Minister wades into a hostile reception as he visits flooding victims in Worcestershire. Inside the gangs behind one of the world's deadliest feuds, with the women and children caught in the middle. In the sport, Derby delight as Manchester United beat rivals Manchester City for the third time this season. And we'll take a look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in the press preview at 10:30.
Hello, good evening from Italy, a nation divided tonight with a quarter of the population now in emergency quarantine. Strict new measures have been put in place to control the spread of coronavirus. Schools, theatres, cinemas and gyms have all been closed across a large area, and even weddings and funerals are banned. The new rules were introduced as Italians were told of a big increase in the number of deaths here, from 233 to 366. Numbers are rising elsewhere too. In the last hour, NHS England has confirmed that the third person with the virus has sadly died in the UK, where 67 people have tested positive in the past 24 hours, the biggest daily rise so far. But the virus has hit Italy harder than any other European country. The lockdown covers Italy's richest region, Lombardy, and its financial capital, Milan. That's in addition to 14 provinces in Italy's north and centre, including Venice. The quarantine will affect around 16 million Italians, and anyone living in these areas will need special permission in order to travel. The measures will stay in place for nearly a month, until the 3rd of April, leaving a country on edge, as our Europe correspondent Michelle Clifford now reports.
Even before the latest dramatic rise in coronavirus cases, many had chosen to stay away from the streets of Milan, a city at the heart of territory now in lockdown. Fear is real here and across a huge swathe of northern Italy, worst hit by the virus. After a week when the government implemented increasingly strict measures, now the Lombardy region and 14 provinces are sealed off from the rest of the nation.
We
understand that all these measures will create inconveniences. We understand that these measures will impose sacrifices, sometimes small and sometimes very large. But this is a time where we must take responsibility for ourselves. We need to understand that all of us need to adhere to the measures. We shouldn't think that we're more clever than that.
In Venice, one of the affected cities, tourists were largely absent from the normally bustling areas. All major gatherings will be halted under the new restrictions. Gyms, museums, ski resorts ordered to close. Weddings and funerals will be stopped as part of the measures, which will last until early April. But the virus is impacting daily life outside of the lockdown area. At masses in Rome, people sat a metre apart from each other. And visitors were thin on the ground outside the Vatican, which has reported its own case of the virus.
I am close in prayer to people who are suffering because of the current coronavirus epidemic, and to all those taking care of them.
There had been worries for the Pope himself after he cancelled a retreat because of illness, but the Vatican said he simply had a common cold. The tough new measures are aimed at preventing coronavirus hitting other parts of Italy as badly as it has the north. But many Italians are critical of the government, saying they've introduced restrictions far too late. Many attempted to escape the north last night as news of the ban on movement leaked out. There was a rush for the last trains out of Milan and other cities and towns. Movement in and out of the affected northern areas is now restricted, except for emergencies and legitimate health and work reasons. And those still in the region, around 16 million people, are being told to stay indoors as much as possible.
What is happening in my city is worrying me, and it is also sad, because Milan is a lively city, and to see it like this today is almost a defeat for me.
We have to remain positive and calm and live in the best way, taking all precautions. We have to adapt our lifestyles, but we carry on.
The government has said anyone found flouting the ban could face jail. But patrolling the region to ensure everyone stays put will be another challenge for a government dealing with Europe's worst coronavirus crisis.
Well, Michelle joins me now from outside the Italian Parliament here in Rome. And Michelle, the Italian government has been criticised for its handling of this crisis.
Yeah, very many Italians that we've spoken to have felt that the government has acted too late. They were mentioning this to us during the course of the week when schools and universities across Italy were closed, when restrictions were put in place on people visiting elderly relatives in nursing homes, and now with the shutdown effectively of vast swathes of the northern region. People feel that the government should have acted much sooner, and you can see some of the anger now boiling over. Certainly in some regions, Puglia and in Sicily, for example, residents there are demanding that some laws are brought into place so that there can be checks on people arriving at train stations or bus stations to find out where they came from, and if they came from the north, those residents want them stopped from entering their areas. Also tonight we saw protests in Naples outside a prison because prison visits across the whole of Italy have been stopped. So the restrictions are coming into place in the hope of stopping the spread of the virus to other parts of Italy on a large scale, but there is great frustration at what is happening in terms of people's limitations, and also great frustration that people really feel the government could have acted sooner.
OK, Michelle, many thanks. So that's the picture in Italy. Back in the UK, it's been confirmed tonight that a third person has died after testing positive for coronavirus. The man was in his 60s. He had underlying health problems and he died at North Manchester General Hospital after recently returning from Italy. Well, his death comes after the government revealed new measures to deal with the outbreak if it gets worse. In the last 24 hours, cases of coronavirus have seen their biggest daily increase so far, rising to 273. That's up 67 compared to yesterday. And with tonight's fatality in Manchester, the number of people who've died now stands at 3. Sky's Tom Parminter has the latest.
Freedom arrived in the back of a black people carrier. One after the other, they drove away from Arrow Park Hospital on the Wirral. It's over a month since they got on the Diamond Princess cruise ship. They were quarantined in Japan after a serious coronavirus outbreak. And now, after a further fortnight of isolation here, it's over.
Just looking forward to going home now.
We are very looking forward to going home. Thank you.
It's a relief. What's it been like in there?
Okay.
It's lovely.
They've been looked after us.
Very much.
I want to say thank you to the government of Japan. Very obviously now it was a very robust quarantine. Without it, I think thousands more would have been infected. That didn't happen. 2,000 or 3,000 now are tested negative. Thanks to them, they were correct.
But the UK has now recorded its biggest daily jump in the numbers of people testing positive for COVID-19. The death of an elderly patient in Milton Keynes has led to 5 other patients there and 9 members of NHS staff, all in isolation. Crucially, the patient had not shown the symptoms: a high temperature, a cough and breathing difficulties.
Now, those criteria aren't as useful as they used to be, because we know the virus is almost certainly circulating in the community, so people might be picking it up without actually satisfying the traditional way that we diagnose the disease. So I think it's really important that we have a high index of suspicion.
The UK government's emergency legislation to tackle coronavirus includes the idea that more court cases could be heard via video link, recruiting 500 more call centre staff for the NHS 111 service. They'll also look at getting retired NHS staff back into work.
Giving direct care, comfort care, I'd be very comfortable with that. And that's a very important consideration, that people who do volunteer are directed to the right areas. We'd absolutely want people to work within their limitations. And if their health is compromised in any way, clearly we'd need to make sure they're protected.
Decisions will be made this week on whether we need to restrict big gatherings like sporting events. There's meetings too over supply lines into shops. Some supermarkets are rationing certain goods online. The Chancellor told Sophie Ridge on Sunday that British businesses will be given help.
It will be an impact for a temporary period of time. I think that's the key thing. So,
you're ready to step in if necessary.
I take my responsibility seriously to make sure, what do we need to do to ease the burden on business over that temporary period of time, to make sure that they have access to the cash flow that they need.
Getting the decisions right and then communicating them effectively with the public are right now just as important as the medical efforts to contain the virus. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Kate McCann, who's in Westminster for us. Kate, the tragic news this evening that a third person has died, someone who'd travelled to